question. In a country where 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer, why would we need to be reminded to go for a mammogram? Yes, the NHS sends out computer-generated letters, but should it have to? Should it really be the state's responsibility to remind every woman over 50 to get their breast checked? I thought I was missing something when the news broke that a computer glitch meant 450,000 women between 68 and 71 hadn't been sent a letter calling them for a checkup. But surely it's a woman's responsibility to check when their last mammogram was. Breast cancer is the most common cancer in the UK. It kills 11,500 women every year. So why would we trust our lives to an NHS computer? Fear-mongering, whipped up by the media, said 270 women just may, have died prematurely because of these missed scans, despite the fact that 72% of all breast cancers are detected by women finding a lump or other symptoms themselves. Yes, every cancer death is a tragedy, but doctors say it's impossible to know whether those missed cancers would have been curable if detected. But if this glitch has done anything, it should be to jolt women into taking control of their own checkups. We only have one body, girls. Let's look out for it.
Carole, everyone would agree that people need to take responsibility. The reality is, around the world, there are public health departments. Governments have a role in public health to inform people about situations, about taking care. So one is to educate people, and not everyone is aware of what the symptoms are of various types of cancer. For example, so people always need to be educated and reminded. That's point number one. Point number two, there is no question that prevention is much better than cure, and the cost of treating someone if they've been diagnosed with serious stage cancer is much higher from a cost point of view, let alone the suffering point of view. Now, my colleague Andrew Lansley, who used to be Health Secretary, is now in the House of Lords. He has written about it openly. He's been diagnosed with bowel cancer. And he says if only it is made compulsory that people have this bowel cancer screening, because the statistics are there. Well, even if it's there, you know, only 59% of people take up the offer of free screening. So you're absolutely right, people should take up the responsibility. But then look at the difference. When something is detected at stage 1, it's almost 100% of them are cured. But if they're detected at stage 4, then only 10% survive. So, you know, the earlier these things are detected, we would be saving lives.
Right, can I just say something? There is no such thing as early detection with breast cancer. Cancer has been developing for 8 years before it's ever picked up by a mammogram. But going back to my point about women taking responsibility, women have an education and knowledge. Women have known since the mammogram breast screening programme was brought in 87, I think it was. Women have been told since then that they're entitled to go for a free mammogram every 3 years. Women over 50 know that they're entitled to that. The idea that you just wouldn't bother... I don't understand women who hadn't been called after 4 years. You know, I can talk about the dangers of mammograms later, and doctors are now questioning whether they're actually good for women, that they don't cause more unintended harm than they cure. And you're wrinkling your eyes, but there's a massive... There's a body of doctors out there who think that it's dangerous. The amount of radiation that a woman gets in one mammogram...
No, but
listen,
you have to weigh up the radiation versus...
Let me finish. No,
spotting
the amount
something
of...
that'll, you know...
But by then it's already developing. And there is no evidence that the most dangerous and advanced cancers have been prevented by screening.
I need to bring in the Health Secretary because he's addressed this directly. This is Jeremy Hunt.
Many families will be deeply disturbed by these revelations, not least because there will be some people who receive a letter having had a recent diagnosis of breast cancer. We must also recognise that there may be some who receive a letter having had a recent terminal diagnosis. For them and others, it is incredibly upsetting to know that you did not receive an invitation for screening at the correct time, and totally devastating to hear you may have lost or be about to lose a loved one because of administrative incompetence.
I'm sorry, Carole, but I'm totally not with you here. The reality is the NHS estimates that for every 200 women screened, one life is saved. We have a system where there is screening that is organised centrally and women are sent letters. If we didn't have a system and it was up to each of us to monitor our own screening intervals, that would be different. We have a system that we are told to rely on. I don't know if you've ever tried to get a screening of your own volition.
A system that messes up regularly.
That's why
this is where we come to a stop just briefly, because we should all wish Lord Lansley a full recovery, as Karen, as you said. And not every woman, Carole, is perhaps as strident or robust as you. Should they then start thinking, where is my letter? Why haven't I got it? Of course they should, but they're not all. A lot of people believe it's all going to... When they go to hospital, they just are almost intimidated. Hold on, I want to bring in a clip, and I stress an NHS nurse. I stress the fact that this woman, for whom this story is all too personal, she used to work in the NHS. She's a nurse, Patricia Minchin. She is now 75, and she's one of hundreds of thousands of women that you referred to who never got that letter.
In the beginning, I was kind of thinking, oh, how disappointing it was that, you know, I missed that 70-year-old mammogram, because basically it could have made a difference. Maybe I would get angry in the future if the treatment, you know, wasn't successful, because my whole family went through the whole journey as well. My husband took me to every appointment, you know, all the hospital visits, the scans, you know, blood tests, the whole thing. It is really quite intensive.
And as we now know, unfortunately, that woman has suffered, so we wish her as well a speedy recovery. And just, Karen, I want to go to Maggie, but the way Jeremy Hunt spoke, you spent far more time in the Houses of Parliament than I have. The level of contrition that he showed, I think, shows how badly the government take it.
I think it's that's the point there. It's on that note, it's what I was trying to say earlier, that actually it's, regardless of whether we think women should take more responsibility or not, there's been a systemic failure here in the system for a service that the government has assured women they'd be provided, and that service hasn't been provided. That's I think a completely separate topic to whether women should be vigilant for themselves. Of course they should. You know, they should be examining themselves regularly, which is what the doctors advise. And on that note, I'd just like to say, from some of the earlier conversation, it is very important to state that we aren't medical doctors on this table. And so I would encourage viewers not to take our advice as if it's professional medical advice. Right. Breast Cancer now have released a statement on the systemic failure that I was talking about. And I think that's the key point here, and that's what the Health Secretary has conceded to as well. We are deeply saddened and extremely concerned to hear that so many women have been let down by such a colossal systemic failure, that hundreds of thousands of women have not received the screening invitations they've been relying upon at a time when they may be most at risk of breast cancer is totally unacceptable. For those women who will have gone on to develop breast cancers that could have been picked up earlier through screening, this is a devastating error. But it's the first half of that statement that I'd like us all just to focus on for a second, and that is that assurances were made that the system was in place, and some women may have been waiting for a letter thinking that...
But my point is, Majid, we know that systems fail all of the time. This was a computer algorithm that failed. And all I'm saying is that people, we value our lives, our breasts, our health. There's a responsibility on us. Women must be aware that they haven't been called, and women know that they can go to their GP and say, I haven't had a letter, I need to be referred for my mammogram. And I think we all have to, you know, we don't get letters to go and get your kidneys checked or your lungs checked. You know, we look for symptoms ourselves. We do have a certain responsibility.
No one is denying what you're saying, but the reality is we have a National Health Service that we're all very proud of. We're all very grateful that we do get these reminders. You get reminders, you get over a certain age to have a colonoscopy, or whether it's a mammogram. And I think it's wonderful that we have a health service that cares for us, that reminds us, that offers us that this is available.
We can't depend on it for our lives, Karen.
We should be able to.
We shouldn't be able to. It's a massive, unwieldy organisation that doesn't always work.
I can't understand
why put your whole faith in an organisation that we have seen, because of various factors, because because of money, because there's not enough staff, sometimes make mistakes. So why would you trust your life to that?
I just can't understand why you're victim blaming. The reality is the system failed. Let's talk about why the system failed, how we can improve it, not that it's the fault of women. Some of you may have died
it's the fault of
because
women.
the system failed.
Stop putting words into my mouth. I am saying it is a responsibility for women to actually think about their health. You would think about, if you had a pain in your gut, you would think it was maybe your bowel. You'd go and have it checked. In the same way we check our breasts.
You may not have any symptoms. These screenings are meant to be preventative, detecting things.
72% of cancers are detected by women finding symptoms themselves.
And the reason we have a system of screening is to detect the ones that women have.
And I think these are distinct debates. That, you know, whether or not screening as a routine procedure is a good or bad thing is a debate doctors are having right now. But that's different to a systemic failure, which is different to wondering why some women didn't inquire as to why.
That's why the government. I think this is balance between the government informing people so that they do spot symptoms themselves as far as possible, offering the screening that will prevent and detect, and then, of course, the treating required. It is three separate things that are required.
It's time to pull the screens down on the screening debate.